Ever wondered why some people sleep after drinking coffee instead of waking up? Coffee, an aromatic beverage that has been a cornerstone of many cultures and morning rituals worldwide, is often celebrated for its invigorating properties. It's the go-to drink for many who need that extra push to kickstart their day. It's the trusty old friend that helps us pull all-nighters. It's the stimulant that keeps us alert during long drives or tedious meetings. But here's the conundrum. Some people, after sipping on their cup of joe, do the exact opposite of what you'd expect. Instead of staying alert, they fall asleep. Instead of being wide-eyed, they're catching Z's. If you're thinking, wait, isn't coffee supposed to wake you up? Well, you're not alone. It's a common assumption, and for many of us, it's our lived reality. But then, why do some people doze off after downing a cup of coffee? It's like they're defying the fundamental law of the coffee universe. Imagine drinking a glass of energy drink and then feeling drowsy. Sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? This paradox has left many coffee aficionados scratching their heads. The truth is, it's a complex issue and it's not as straightforward as it seems. There are a lot of factors at play, including individual differences, caffeine metabolism, and even the role of dehydration. But before we get ahead of ourselves, it's essential to remember that coffee is more than just a drink. It's a compound of various elements, each with its unique effect on our bodies. And while it's true that caffeine, the main active ingredient in coffee, is a well-known stimulant, the way it interacts with our bodies can vary greatly. So the next time you see someone nodding off after a cup of coffee, don't be too quick to judge. It's not them being weird, it's not the coffee being weak, it's just biology doing its thing. Seems strange, doesn't it? Let's dive into the science behind this intriguing occurrence. First up, we need to understand what caffeine is and how it generally functions in our bodies. Caffeine, a naturally occurring stimulant, is found in several plants, including coffee beans, tea leaves, and cacao pods. It's probably the most widely consumed psychoactive substance in the world, and it's most commonly ingested in the form of coffee or tea. But what exactly does caffeine do once it enters your system? Well, it's pretty clever. When you're awake, your brain is continuously producing a neurotransmitter called adenosine. As adenosine levels rise, you start to feel more and more tired. This is your body's way of telling you that it's time to wind down and get some rest. However, when you consume caffeine, it competes with adenosine for the same receptors in your brain. Essentially, caffeine blocks these receptors, stopping adenosine from doing its job. This results in the opposite effect. Instead of feeling sleepy, you feel more alert and awake. It's like putting a block of wood under a door. The door can't close, and in this case that door is your brain's signal to feel tired. It's also worth noting that caffeine doesn't just block adenosine receptors, but it also stimulates the release of other neurotransmitters like dopamine and adrenaline. Dopamine is often associated with the feeling of pleasure and reward, which is why that first morning cup of coffee can feel so satisfying. Adrenaline, on the other hand, is our body's fight or flight hormone, which can increase heart rate and blood pressure, making us feel more energized. However, everyone's body processes caffeine differently. Factors like genetics, age, body mass, and even your daily habits can affect how quickly or slowly your body metabolizes caffeine. So far so good, but how does this explain people falling asleep after a cup of joe? Well, let's dive deeper into the individual differences in caffeine metabolism in the next part of our discussion. Here's where individual differences come into play. Each of us is a unique blend of genetics, age, and lifestyle habits, all of which can significantly impact how our bodies metabolize caffeine. Let's start with genetics. Some people are naturally equipped with a set of genes that allow them to metabolize caffeine rapidly. This means they can drink a cup of coffee and feel its stimulating effects almost immediately, but the effects also wear off quickly. On the other hand, slow metabolizers may not feel the caffeine kick in for a while, and when it does, it lingers. This lingering effect can lead to feelings of lethargy, which might explain why some people feel sleepy after a coffee break. Age is another critical factor. As we grow older, our body's ability to metabolize caffeine tends to slow down. This means that the older you are, the longer caffeine stays in your system, potentially causing drowsiness. Now let's talk about tolerance. Just like with any substance, the more frequently you consume caffeine, the more your body gets used to it. Regular caffeine consumers often develop a tolerance to its stimulating effects. This means they need to consume more to feel the same level of alertness. Over time, this could result in feeling more tired rather than alert after drinking coffee. And finally, frequency of consumption plays a role too. If you're the type who drinks coffee only occasionally, your body might react more intensely to the caffeine, leading to quick stimulation followed by a sudden drop in energy levels. This drop can make you feel more tired than you were before you had that cup of coffee. So you see, our individual differences in genetics, age, tolerance, and frequency of consumption can all influence how we metabolize caffeine. And these differences could be why some of us feel more like taking a nap than running a marathon after that cup of joe. Okay, that explains a part of the puzzle, but there's another piece to consider. Did you know that coffee can also cause dehydration? Let's dive into that for a moment. Coffee, like many of our favorite beverages, is a diuretic. That's a fancy way of saying it increases the rate of urination. But what does this mean for us, the coffee drinkers? Well, every time we take a sip of that aromatic brew, we're not just getting a caffeine boost, we're also losing fluid at a faster rate. Now imagine you're having multiple cups a day. That's a lot of fluid loss, right? And what happens when our body loses more water than it takes in? Bingo! We get dehydrated. Dehydration is more than just feeling thirsty, it's a state where your body doesn't have enough water to carry out its normal functions. And one of the major symptoms of dehydration is fatigue. Yes, you heard that right. Dehydration can make you feel tired, drowsy, and even sleepy. So, how does this work? Well, your body needs water to produce energy. When you're dehydrated, your energy production slows down and leaves you feeling sluggish. Moreover, dehydration can lower your blood volume, making your heart work harder to pump blood and deliver oxygen to your cells. This extra work can wear you out and make you feel tired. Now let's connect the dots. When you drink coffee, you're not just getting a caffeine kick, but also potentially setting yourself up for dehydration. And when you get dehydrated, you feel fatigued and sleepy. So if you're wondering why you're feeling drowsy after your daily cup of joe, dehydration might just be the culprit. Of course, this doesn't mean you should give up on coffee altogether. Just be mindful of your intake and make sure you're hydrating properly. After all, balance is the key to everything. And who knows, a glass of water might just be the pick-me-up you need to fight off that coffee-induced sleepiness. So, dehydration is another factor that might be making you sleepy after a cup of coffee. Let's not forget the role of our body's natural sleep-wake cycle. This cycle, also known as the circadian rhythm, is an internal clock that runs in the background of your brain and cycles between sleepiness and alertness at regular intervals. This rhythm can influence how caffeine affects us. Our bodies are complex, and just as everyone's favorite brew is unique, so too is our body's response to caffeine. Timing is key. If you're a regular coffee drinker, your body builds up a tolerance to the caffeine. This means you might not get that wake-up kick you're expecting, especially if you're drinking it at a time when your body is naturally prepared to sleep. For instance, if you consume coffee late in the evening or at night, when your body's circadian rhythm is signaling for sleep, the caffeine might not give you the wakefulness you expect. Instead, it could disrupt your body's natural sleep signals and lead to a restless night. But here's an interesting tidbit. Drinking coffee at certain times of the day might actually help in promoting sleep. Yes, you heard it right. If you drink a cup of joe in the early evening, it might not interfere with your sleep. On the contrary, it might even help you sleep better. How so? Well, caffeine has a half-life of about 6 hours. This means that 6 hours after drinking your cup of coffee, half of the caffeine content is still in your system. If you drink coffee in the early evening, say around 6 o'clock, by the time you're ready for bed, most of the caffeine has been metabolized by your body. The takeaway here is, if you want to enjoy your coffee and still get a good night's sleep, try adjusting your coffee consumption to align with your body's natural rhythm. So, a combination of individual differences, dehydration, and the timing of consumption might explain why some people fall asleep after drinking coffee. So, let's put all these pieces together. We embarked on this journey to unravel the coffee conundrum, and we've certainly learned a lot. We've delved into the basics of caffeine, a stimulant that, in general, wakes us up. However, individual differences come into play. Each person metabolizes caffeine differently due to genetic factors and other variables like age and liver function. We've also explored the role of dehydration. Coffee is a diuretic, and dehydration can lead to feelings of fatigue, which is why some people might feel sleepy after drinking it. Then, we delved into the complex realm of the sleep-wake cycle, showing how coffee can disrupt this cycle and possibly induce sleepiness. So there you have it. Coffee and sleep are not as straightforward as they seem. Remember, everyone is unique and responds to caffeine differently. So next time you see someone dozing off after a cup of coffee, you'll know why.